get the mic sorted and explain the system. Or is it on off?
Yeah, it should be on.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Trevor. When I said think big, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to get. I was talking to Jonathan Rignall yesterday morning, and before I was to go on air, I'd sent him the flyer that I showed you earlier, and he said, "Oh my gosh, you've bitten off a big chunk to deal with there, haven't you?" And he'd been looking at the flyer, and I said, "Well, actually, that was only a snapshot of a few." And he said, "Oh, I thought you were going to say that." So there will be multiple areas covered in our conversation, and I hope through Trevor's presentation you were able to really get a good understanding that nearly everything that we do in some way, shape or form is going to affect our environmental footprint, how we impact on our environment. So moving on, Roland, Em, Catherine, Trevor, thanks for agreeing to join with us today. What we're going to do is each of the panel members I'll introduce the members, give you a short background to them, and each of them will take the opportunity to spend about 5 minutes speaking on either what Trevor has talked to you about or some other things that they would like to add to the conversation. So I'm going to actually start with Evan. And Evan Davies, I hadn't met Evan until today. I thought it was going to be somebody else filling in for you, and Evan has been nominated by Bendigo Sustainability Group. So Evan discovered the healing power of food when his mother was diagnosed with an untreatable cancer, changed her diet and saw a dramatic change in her health. From this, a passion to educate people of the relationship between our food and our health was born. Evan experimented with organic food production on a one acre in Eaglehawk before creating a community education project at Gravel Hill Gardens, which you're all probably fairly familiar with, which demonstrated the principles of organic growing, permaculture and sustainable food production. Evan saw the need for affordable organic produce in central Victoria, so established a business as an organic greengrocer, and the business is now Victoria's biggest retailer of organic produce outside of Melbourne. Now, Evan is on the committee of Bendigo Sustainability Group, and he's representing BSG on the panel today. So, Evan, lead away.
Thank you. Good evening. First of all, I'd like to say to the Council, this is a great initiative to get these forums happening for us to be able to talk about the issues that are important. And I guess hats off to you that we're doing this. This is a great thing. Trevor, thanks very much for your talk. I wanted to tell a brief story, actually, which I was inspired to in hearing some of your little stories. Back in 1999, it was actually Shaman Stone who started off the Greencore project that I was part of. And the project that I was part of was planting 15,000 trees on the south-facing slopes of Big Hill, that entrance to the city. I get to look at those trees growing as I come back from market every week and see how they're going. The pinnacle of that project that we did was to have a train come from Melbourne with 1,000 people on it, stop in the middle of the paddock. I don't know how big rail lets do that. And all these people came off the train. There was primary school students, there was university students, there was environmental groups that all got involved. It was funded through the Olympic Land Care project, which was money for making Australia more pretty for when the Olympics came. That experience was that we had 1,000 people get off this train really, really keen and eager to help the environment. So my team, we helped them plant those trees. But the interesting part of the story is that for the next month after that day, we replanted a lot of trees. Because though we had 1,000 willing people, they weren't yet skilled. So I think this kind of undertaking, we're all very keen. We all want to see changes in our city. We just don't know how to do it yet. and that's what we need, guidance from our community. I encourage the council to look within the community. We've got a lot of experts on ecological matters, environmental matters, and certainly within the BSG, as I've been involved in that group, quite astounded at some of the folks that are involved and their skill levels and their knowledge. And yeah, it's very exciting. So I think with the BSG being quite involved with the city, particularly with the solar projects, you know, we've got the community being involved, and we're going to achieve some things. I've written a couple of quick notes just in response to some notes that I had from Trevor before his talk, and that was around how we've disconnected from the forest, disconnected from nature. And I thought I'd just share a few of those things that I saw, how we disconnected from nature. In the past, people fed themselves from the forest. Now a lot of the food we eat comes from China. In the past, our furniture was made with fine timbers, grown in our own forests. Now our furniture is made out of MDF in China. In the past, a lot of our leisure time was spent outdoors, enjoying the forests, the parks, and even our own backyards. But now we spend leisure time on our devices, which are made in China. It's tongue-in-cheek, but it's the truth. We've outsourced our own supplying of needs to people on the other side of the planet. And as was mentioned by Trevor, we have the resources locally to provide for our own communities. And I think we should really take on the challenge of getting that happening.
Thanks, Evan. At this point, I'd actually also like to acknowledge the work that BSG do and the partnership that the city enjoys with that group, and particularly our third forum. BSG have provided a lot of input and provided a lot of assistance to us in developing that Repower forum. And there are numerous event actions and activities that go on that we enjoy partnering and supporting. I think, Chris, we tend to catch up just about once a fortnight at the moment, so it's a terrific partnership. So thank you. Our next presenter is Roland Hogan. Roland has over 20 years of professional experience in a wide range of natural resource management areas, including river health, environmental flows, land and water management, salinity management and water policy. Roland was responsible for the development of the North Central Regional Catchment Strategy and waterway strategies, and is currently developing a natural resource management climate change plan for the region. Wow, luck with that. Roland brings his extensive knowledge as a natural resource management practitioner to the panel this evening. Thanks, Roland.
Thank you. So with the CMA, I suppose we take a bit of a broader regional perspective on things, so it's not just about the city of Bendigo, but what I thought I'd talk a little bit about tonight is around our climate change adaptation mitigation plan, which is really about thinking about the environment, thinking about climate change, but also thinking about people, because we can't do any of this without people. And I think that's been a pretty clear message from everyone tonight, which is good. So what we've done as part of that process, we've been working, and this is a plan, there's about 53 NRM bodies like the North Central CMA around Australia. So we've been working with CSIRO to come up with some updated climate change projections, and that's been, these are the ones being used in the latest IPCC report that was released recently. Unfortunately, what it's saying though isn't really great reading, so just read off a couple of the things that we're expected to see over the next little while. So average temperatures will continue to increase in all seasons. We'll have more hot days and warm spells. We'll have fewer but possibly more damaging frosts. By about 2090, we're likely to see less rainfall in the cool seasons. But we're also likely to see an intensity in rainfall, so an increase in intensity when it does rain. We're likely to see harsher fire weather conditions. So it's probably not great. The projections are probably saying that things are going to get pretty difficult for us. Now, obviously, a lot of the projections are based on a lot of data, but also a lot of assumptions and a lot of assumptions about what's going to happen in the future. So there's a fair bit of uncertainty there. So and and some of the information that we've used in our planning is relating to like a high emission scenario and a medium emission scenario. So just to scare you a little bit. So the high emission scenario, which we're currently tracking on now, which is not a good thing. We're looking by 2090 to have increases, and this is a regional projection, increases of between about 2.7 degrees to 4.5 degrees Celsius. So it's a huge increase. Think about what that might mean for people and the environment. So it's potentially got huge implications. And rainfall potentially could decrease by about 27%. But it could also increase by 9%, and it kind of reflects there's a fair bit of uncertainty in how we've looked at projections. Some of the threats that we're thinking about in terms of the environment, so our plan is really about the environment and how people interact with that. So obviously reduced rainfall, increased temperatures has some direct impacts on some of the things that are important to us. So our rivers and wetlands are likely to have a lot less water, which obviously will have a huge impact on our aquatic ecosystem. And vegetation is likely to be changes in composition in vegetation as things can't really handle less rainfall or increased temperatures. So we're going to see some changes in the environment that we see. Some of the indirect impacts are also really important. So potential changes in land use. So agricultural and other land uses might change depending on what happens with climate. And that will have an impact on the environment as well. Weeds and fire are likely to be an impact too. So what our plan's really about is thinking about both mitigation and adaptation. So mitigation is about how do we reduce our emissions. So some things like the lights, the LED lights is fantastic. What our plan really tries to do is think about where would we plant carbon trees in the landscape to get biodiversity outcomes. So it's about connectivity, it's about increasing remnants, those type of things. So what our plan is really about is trying to encourage people to actually, to help the environment kind of get through some of this climate change, but also provide some mitigation. So some of the things that we talked about, what Trevor said. We all share this problem of climate change, and we're all going to have to contribute to it. So I think that's really important, and I suppose some of the adaptation kind of approaches that we're taking as part of our plan is really around capacity building. I think you might have talked about it, Evan. It's about, we've got a lot of people out there, they need some information and some skills to be able to deal with the problem, and I think that's going to be really important. Technology, looking at technology transfers, education, communication, demonstrations, supporting the community networks and the other things that happen that are really important. R&D is going to be really important. Thinking about how it might link to the environment strategy about how can we think about planning in a different way, thinking about not planning now, but planning for a much reduced water, rainfall. What does that mean for our rural areas and our lifestyle and hobby farms? So those type of things might need to be considered. So one of the last things I want to talk about is we just recently developed a study with Charles State Uni around social drivers for NRM. So what we've done is gone out across our region and asked about 200 questions around the environment, and we've got about 800 responses back. So we've got this wealth of information about what landholders, particularly landholders with land greater than 10 hectares, so not necessarily urban dwellers, but we've got a really good understanding about what their values and behaviours are in relation to the environment, and it gives us really good information around what they're thinking and what they know and don't know, and how that might inform our kind of our approach to dealing with some of the big issues that we've got. So I think I'll leave it at that, but we've got some information on the City Greater Bendigo specifically as well. So we can really kind of drill down a little bit and understand what that means for rural landholders within the City of Greater Bendigo and how we might be able to link that into the environment strategy. So I might leave it there, Robin.
Thanks, Ron. The other day I had a quick look at some some of that survey information, and the differences that came up between the responses from the greater Bendigo area compared to some of the other municipalities was quite stark. So we are peculiar, if nothing else. Our final speaker is Catherine Stanislawski. Catherine is our Sustainable Environment Advisory Committee representative on the panel today, and Catherine is a community member on that committee. Catherine has lived in Bendigo for 10 years and now, as the mother of 3 boys, is an active member of the Huntley Kinder Parents Committee and the Huntley Primary School Council. The Bendigo area appeals to Catherine because of the surrounding bushland and the climate, and loves living in Huntley as it has a country feel that's not too far from the Bendigo city centre. Catherine enjoys spending time with her family, gardening and working on environment as an environmental project officer, managing the delivery of environmental water to wetlands within the North Central catchment area. Pretty good job, eh? So thank you, Catherine.
So I'm going to talk about me and my little bubble of the world that I live in with 3 kids that, one goes to school, one goes to kinder, one's at childcare sometimes, one's at home, and I look after other people's kids, and my life is kind of crazy, and I do feel really lucky to live where I live. I grew up in Frankston, urban sprawl. I might miss the beach a little bit, but I really do like what Bendigo has to offer, and I really do love living in Huntley. The forest is 1 block away from my house, a short walk or a scooter ride, whatever, with the kids, and we're there in the bush and we're watching the wattles grow, and we're getting down and we're smelling chocolate lilies. It's just a fabulous place to be. But in the short time, I guess, that since my oldest son was born, I've really watched much of the vegetation in my area be removed and changed to make way for roads and housing estates, replaced by streetscape kind of planting. People's crazy gardens full of agapanthus and English box, and I used to work in the nursery industry, and those 2 species alone you can stay afloat as a nursery because people buy that much of it. Well and truly gone are those greenwood orchids that I used to really stop and admire while my son was dozing in his pram while we went for a walk. So, I do feel overwhelmed by the rate of the development of the new estates and those native plants being, replaced by crazy plants, and street lighting for lights that are turned on even before the estate has even got a house in it, and one day it'll be LEDs and that's fabulous, but still. And also, then the soil disturbance and gazanias turned up, and my son goes, "Here, Mum, have a pretty flower," and I'm like, "Ah!" Now he knows to say, "Mum, is this a weed? Do you want this one?" So I guess, though, I watched this development of housing estates, and I've just made 3 babies, and I'm contributing to that problem. Possibly because I'm going to live for longer, as you said. But, I'm creating that demand for that housing estate just as much as everyone else is. And I think about my house, and I think about the stuff that I have in my house, and I just have stuff. I bought stuff for my kids because I thought they needed it. Then people came with stuff and they bought more stuff. They give me stuff because they think it's the right thing to do. I don't want stuff, and I don't want to have to clean up the stuff that keeps getting left all around my house. My garden is full of sticks and leaves and rocks and lizards and chooks. It's got a sandpit, we've got a veggie patch. Those are the things that kids should be playing with. The train tracks and the Lego and stuff, they've got their place, but we only need a few of those things. I don't need Fisher-Price plastic stuff. Somehow it's in my home, it's everywhere. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. And then I go to the supermarket and there's more stuff. And they say, "Here, have some Dominoes. They're free. Have a card about how it's really good to grow vegetables." And then they want to have, the kids in the town, they want to swap them and share them, and people want more of them. And so I have more stuff lying around my house that I don't want, that no one really wants, but people's giving it to us, and so we feel like we should take it. I don't want it. Anyway, so when I was preparing for what I was going to say tonight, I was reminded that the theme of this year's World Environment Day is 17 billion dreams, one planet consumed with care, and that's been previously mentioned. There's so many people on this earth that have nothing, but I have a house full of lots of stuff that really is nothing, and I think I really couldn't agree more with the consume with care kind of thing. But that said, you know, yesterday, I popped down to Woolies, and I made that choice of being one of those people that's part of that continuous problem of shopping in a place that doesn't have a sustainable conscience. Even though I know it's bad for the world, and I know that locally Bendigo has an issue with landfill, and you know, where are we going to put all these things that we keep collecting? So I feel frustrated at myself for how disconnected I am, and that we all are, with the impact that I have on nature, and that those seemingly normal actions really do have a huge impact on our environment. And so I'm sounding really negative, and you're waving, so I'll be really quick, sort of, I'll go. And I guess I get really overwhelmed by the enormity of all of that stuff. You know, we've talked about that today: population growth, climate change, waste management, etc., etc. But there really are some positive things that you can do, and that I think I do sometimes, to be part of a solution to try and make a change. My kids are really lucky; they go to bush kinder, so you know, I've got this fantastic opportunity for the kids to play in the bush in a fantastic learning environment where all they use is nature. You know, what a wonderful way to set up children for the future that are still passionate about the bush like we are. You can contribute to things like the Bendigo Residential Development Strategy by just going online and filling out a form and saying what parts of it you agree with and what parts you don't. So you can be involved actively that way. And I really like some of the aspects of the Bendigo Residential Development Strategy where we're not looking to expand on the footprint but keep within, you know, the area that's already been kind of, you know, cleared. I think we can do better. I think we can keep those areas where those greenwood orchids were, leave them there in the housing estate and build around them. But, you know, there's some positive steps towards that. And I guess I've just found that generally being an active member in my community makes me feel better about what happens in the environment. Through the Huntly Kinder, we've petitioned to get a permanent pedestrian crossing on the Midland Highway. That's a way that we can address some of that. I mean, there's a crossing there already, but you know, for the rest of the time of day, we can reduce the amount of traffic that's on the road by making it much safer and easier for us to get around in our community. And I think by doing those small things, you are contributing without always getting overwhelmed by the enormity of everything else. So when you go to the shops, you know, do I need those dominoes? No, you really don't. And use this type of forum to get involved and focus on some things that you're passionate about, and you know, pick some small things that are more easily achievable tasks.
Thanks, Catherine, and I think you may have stolen all our story. I think we can all relate to that, and those blessed dominoes certainly did become a focus. And things like that just grow. And my family says I'm a hoarder, but it's no, everything, I can reuse that again. I can, I'll find something for it to be reused for someday. Trouble is I can't find it when I do need to reuse it. So thank you to each of the panel members. Now we're going to turn to the audience, to you for questions. And I'd invite somebody to start the ball rolling with a question to the panel.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks.
Question for Trevor. You said that we all need to kind of shared understanding of the problem before we can act. And I agree with that, but I'm just wondering what kind of scope do councils have to use perhaps economic instruments to influence people's behaviour? Because not everyone out there wants to be an environmentalist, and is never going to be, and councils have things like bylaws, penalties, they have fees that they charge for various things, and they charge rates. So all of these things could be potentially manipulated to encourage people's behaviour in certain directions. But I don't see that happening very much, with the notable exception perhaps of rate rebates for nature covenants, trust for nature. Just wondering what you think the scope is in that field.
Very difficult question. I can't remember what this year's annual budget is. Is it about 180 million? It's up there about, yeah.
Just over 200.
Just over 200. Yeah, $20 million out. It's over $20 million. In actual fact, what I was saying that was, it's a huge influence on what we spend money on. And I'm not going to give you any specific examples, but other than to say, the example that Robin quoted about the Lighting the Regions project just represents how we can actually readjust our expenditure and make huge impacts. In Darren's area, I've become aware that one of the staff in Darren's area has actually potentially saved the council nearly $20 million over 20 years, simply by looking at a totally different way of addressing an environmental issue associated with the tip. And I suppose it does sort of reflect what I was trying to say, that there are ways in which we can actually look at the same problem in a different way. And that's what I was trying to say with Bendigo, that we, I think, can leverage our expenditure. Collectively, 100,000 people with their expenditure, even a relatively small amount could make a substantial difference. And I think that's the challenge for the environmental strategy, to work out what those perhaps half dozen great initiatives will be. I haven't got the answer, but I reckon we'll uncover it.
You? John?
All of our speakers this evening have highlighted the importance of Bendigo's forests to the livability and amenity of Bendigo. The state government is trying to destroy those forests with their fuel reduction burning, aiming to destroy 5% of the forests, i.e. all of the forests over 20 years, by diminishing the biodiversity values, because I think it's undoubted that burning the forest does diminish biodiversity. What can the council do, or what is the council doing to counteract that state government policy?
Are you looking at me, Roland? You're in this space more than I am.
I certainly am, but I have to be a little bit mindful here. There's no doubt about it that fuel reduction burning is a threatening process for our bushland areas. No doubt about it at all. And I think that's one of the challenges that we as a city are going to have to think about and work out. How do we get the protection that we need and should have from fire, from wildfire, and also maintain the very element that makes the city what it is, that city in the forest. So I hear very loud and clear what your concern, because I share that, and in our document here, we actually have listed it as fuel reduction burning as one of those big things that does impact significantly on our health of our forest. I know it's not the comprehensive answer, but we're not to the end of the journey yet.
I guess, Robin, if I could add to that, it's not only unique to Bendigo either. There's other areas have started to talk about it now, because they realise that they're being burnt so frequently, particularly over in the northwest, that you barely got black sticks to burn now. And still they insist that it's going to be burnt and so on like that. But right throughout Victoria, there is that change in thinking from let's burn the Jesus out of it and protect everybody to, well, hang on, something's going awry. And it's taken only probably a few years for us to understand that and realise that, which is probably the only good thing out of it.
And I think that there are changes afoot that have to be worked through, because even internal to the government departments are working out that, hang on a minute, the solution that we thought we had isn't probably the solution we need to have.
Trevor, you referred to at your presentation almost the comparison of a microcosm or almost a laboratory or pilot space that Bendigo could be positioned for. Any sort of thoughts about what could be done that's innovative, ready to go in that sort of space?
Well, I didn't make mention of the Bendigo Metro Rail project, and some people may be, under a misapprehension about what that's about. But essentially, it's about saying, how can we utilise the resources we've got? If we had to rebuild the railway system in Bendigo, I would guess we're probably talking $400 or $500 million. By the time you bought all the land, built all the track, built all the stations and signalling and so on. Now, that's not going to solve our internal transport problems, but in actual fact, what it does is potentially shift a number of people, an increasing number of people, onto rail And even if it only means at the end of the day that what we get is more trains between here and Melbourne, that's less cars that are travelling between here and Melbourne. Another interesting element of the Bendigo Metro Rail project is that, and this has sort of emerged from some of the discussions we've had in the last few days, might help you in Huntly. For the last 6 or 7 years, the City Council's been putting a railway station at Huntly on maps. And the response of the government generally, PTV, Public Transport Victoria particularly, is to take that off the map. We keep living on the map. We had a breakthrough last week. They actually said, we've given up. You can have that map. We've done Huntly Railway Station. Because actually one of their people came from Melbourne and said, you know what, if you build a station in a paddock, you'll actually build a town around it. And so perhaps you might be able to travel to the centre of Bendigo on a train one day. That'd be a great experience for you and your children, wouldn't it?
They love trains.
We've heard some interesting information about the environmental impacts of our food system. Thank you for that. And also to Evan. You've also mentioned that we have an advantage of not being in a food bowl. We're fortunate to have the forest, but I do believe we are at a disadvantage by not having a localised food supply. So Council's made some great steps towards looking at that issue with the homegrown booklet that you've got. What else do you have on the agenda that will speed up that process to get people growing food, great enthusiasm, help spaces in Bendigo?
Thanks, Jen.
What I was suggesting, Jen, was that because we've got almost that disconnect, it actually means that we consciously have to go out and do something. Whereas perhaps those communities where you are surrounded by food, it actually becomes part of the background noise. And I wouldn't have said this 10 years ago, but there's a huge interest in food. And I think it's partly because we actually realise we've actually lost something that we once had. And so bringing that back is actually going to energise a lot more people than perhaps if it was just there in our face all the time. So this is what I was sort of referring to. Let's turn these sort of apparent contradictions, these apparent weaknesses we might have, and see how we can turn them into an opportunity. So we actually could demonstrate a lot more about growing your own local food, perhaps than a place where it's just seen as a day-to-day activity. We actually, I think, can energise people. I must make a comment about the stuff that you've got. Recent stat from America, the average household in America has 57 tonnes of stuff delivered every year. Well, that's food, but that's where we're going.
Yeah, I watched, like, my grandfather passed away a year or two ago, and Nana moved out of the house that they'd been living in for however many years. And the stuff, and like, yeah, but she's like, you like this stuff, I've got a dining room table. I've got a dining room table, and and all this crystal that's beautiful. I don't want a crystal, what am I going to do with that? It's, there's stuff. And fashion's changed, and we think we need to change the stuff that we've got, I'm going, I don't want your stuff, it's daddy.
So I was just wondering with that, whether we have some pretty strong community networks, and we can maybe develop some new ones around certain specific issues like growing your own vegetables or whatever it is, and kind of getting that, encouraging that to happen, sharing new things and sharing how things work, and kind of building those networks. So I know that already probably do exist, but I think I think that would be really important to try and...
I just want to mention the Stephen Alexander projects in a couple of our primary schools in Bendigo, where kids in primary school are learning not only how food's grown, but that food is grown. This is a new concept for some children, that apples actually grow on trees, that milk comes from a cow, not a carton. So it's those sort of projects that I'd love to see the council assist with, some of those things to expand the reach, and particularly when you're talking about educating children around food, then start including sustainability, environmental issues. The kids are the ones who, in 20 years, are going to be making the decision whether our forests become urban areas in 30 years. Do you know what I mean? Like we need to educate these kids now, and it's projects like that that are going to make those differences. So they're already there. Our community's already being taught. Those who want to learn can go and learn how to compost. They can go and learn how to set up a garden bed. They can go and get involved in the old Church on the Hill garden that meets every second week on a Saturday afternoon. These things are already happening in the community. Jen, I know that you've been putting together a compilation of all these different projects around town so that we can present that to the community so everyone can get involved who wants to.
Just to say too, that there's no high schools, as far as we know, in town that have a connection with food. So these kids are finishing in year 6 and then just going into, like, disconnecting again from that place. So I think
Any
that's
administrators of high schools here?
Each of you have either alluded to implicitly or explicitly acknowledged the need for community capacity building. And just been talking about the need for education. I suggest even that the reason we're not seeing that in high schools is that it's not mandated in the curriculum. What do you see, particularly interested in Catherine and Evan's view as the more community representative people, no offence, what do you see the role of council as in the space of education?
Well, I guess from my experience with kinder, not so much with school, I'm sort of starting to move into being a bit more involved in that sort of stuff, but you know, we've got a veggie patch and all that sort of stuff where the kids are really excited to pull out the veggies, but I think that there's more that we can do, and I think that, you know, we've got this concept of bush kinder kind of stuff, but there's this block behind us that's awaiting one day potentially something to be built there that council's not quite sure about yet. And we're starting to talk about, well, revegetating that, but I can also see a potential where there's a shared community garden sort of space, and I think that the council could help with those sorts of things, identifying areas of land that, you know, we can use as a community to be growing more stuff that we're all using together and sharing together. And I think there's that food is free kind of stuff that's going on. You know, someone's got a lemon tree and it's got 1 million lemons on it. Well, they should be bringing that to a place where everyone's not buying a lemon from Mr. Safeway. They're buying it. They're taking it from wherever it is that it's being left and we're all sharing it. Now, I don't grow a lemon tree. I grow a mandarin tree. And I don't know, I think it's that sense of community kind of stuff and having some shared spaces that we can all use. That's how I feel.
So Robin, we've been trying to do that very concept in place in the university area of Bendigo. Aaron is well aware of that. Laura's aware of it. Roland's aware of it. There's a lot of us in here that were aware of Wollstonecroft Park, where 8 years ago now a master plan was developed, and yet to this day we're still trying to get a concept plan now built at the other end of it for an adventure play space. There's probably people here who are involved with the original design of it, from a community hub, community garden design, and yet we've been sort of roadblocked along various years through different levels of council and councillors that have come and gone, and impediments with soil conditions at the old site, which was for the most part, it wasn't anyone's one responsibility in here, but yet there's been this huge community initiative to try and get that volunteerism, to try and attend meetings and progress it, and yet I'm personally exhausted trying to get it off the ground, and finally this year we're actually going to start to see something happen there with a small amount of money that council put in last year's budget to get the place-based design, but there's still a lot more to go. So I look at something like this and all these other new initiatives that might come out of this document. Are they going to be another 10 years away? Are they going to be 15 years away? And here, I thought this was a really good place that we could actually, if we had this partly built by now, or at least 4 years ago, I mean, my kids weren't even born when we first started. One of them's reaching close to 10 now. We haven't got a neighbourhood, but they'll be 20 years of age and want to be going to the movies by the time they actually get the carrots in the wicket beds. So I just, I'm not sort of trying to have a big black balloon over top of everyone here tonight, but it really does frustrate people out there who are wanting to progress these things, and yet, the level of energy can start to wane over a period of time. How do we overcome that? That might be a question for you, Trevor, because Harry knows where I'm going with it. Catherine hears it too a lot, so. Evan, jump into...
Well, I say just do it.
Well, we have thought about that, but, there's some good people that we're working with within council who are saying stick with us and we'll get there, but, at times we have felt about guerrilla gardening, so,
But I think there's also some bite-sized things you can do, like the barriers, some barriers that have been put up because of testing has to be done for gas and all that sort of thing. But there are areas around that reserve that there was no chip. And I think they need to be identified very quickly and make sure they are, and do something on those particular areas, so as things are staged. And I mean, in local government, you've got to be persistent. I mean, you can head up a council, but one thing the slowness of government is just so draining.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
That was the whole plan. It was a bite-sized approach. The master plan specifically too, at the time. So, anyway,
Can I share a story that I heard today? Someone in a council in Melbourne decided that they wanted to get 2 car parks closed so they could actually create a space where people could sit and enjoy the street. So they went through the normal processes, and after 3 months they were told they weren't allowed to do it. So then they found out that if you wanted to put a skip in the street because you were demolishing a building, you could get a permit for $20 and you could get it in 48 hours. So they got a permit for a skip, put it in the car parking space and converted the skip into seats.
everything you do on the committee.
I did start with a story that took us 15 years to get the streetlights changed over, so yeah. I did forget to mention that these Talk Ecological cards are scattered around. They're thought provokers, so if you wanting to use one of these to jog your thought processes, great.
Hi. Thanks very much for very interesting presentations. I would disagree that we can sideline politicians and let them off the hook. If you look at what's happened in Victoria since we moved to Bendigo, when we came here we had vegetation regulations that meant you could actually, and council could actually work with things like people like TMA or people at DSE and save trees. We don't really have that now because politicians have dismantled those annoying regulations. There are some things, however, still firmly in the court of council. And I was just wondering the other day, with open space regulations of new developments, such as we might be proposing in a paddock around where the Huntly station goes, what is our mandated open space? And is that something council can mandate? I just want to tell a story, seeing as everyone else is. I was on
we're not getting through very many questions, so please keep it short, Wendy.
It's very short. I was on Magnetic Island. I was being attacked by a fierce Queensland dog a couple of years ago and took hiding in a partially built estate. And the bloke drove up and said, "What's the matter?" I told him. He happened to be the developer, but I said, "Look, you've done a beautiful job here. You've saved all this swamp and you've put a boardwalk through it." He said, "That's because the council here has a 30% open space mandated for this island." And I wondered, is this sort of thing possible in Bendigo?
It is possible, but there is a mandated requirement of 5% of the land area, or what the equivalent in cash of what that is in that money's pool. But you might you know, look around at some of the newer estates around Bendigo. Some of the developers are actually providing, and I think Damien might know the percentage that the Imagine estate at Strathfield say it must be close to 25%.
Yeah, the industry standards with progressive programs are around the 20 or early 20% mark at the moment, and that's coming into regional areas in most regional cities. A lot of it's on the plan still. It'll be coming through in the next 5 years.
But that is up to the developer to do that.
It is up to the developer, and they see that as a selling package, and I think
Well, I agree.
and it is working that way. We are just in the process of starting a public open space strategy, another strategy, but that will be one of the issues that we have to address.
Sorry, I keep looking up your Rory, so your turn.
Yeah, just a couple of things. The comment before about high school students, I suppose certainly high school students, particularly those who are doing VCO or whatever, dealing with foods and actually working, you know, in the school or through industry and through work experience. So there's quite a bit of happening in that regard, probably not like in primary schools. Probably a couple other things. I'm interested in terms of the panel, each of you, in terms of what you would see as your ideal, because I suppose, I'm sure all of us who come here tonight have probably got a bit of an ideal, or what we see is what would be one of the things we'd really like to see happen. So I'd be interested to hear from each of the panel about what you would see like in relation to the strategy. I suppose the second thing is in terms of obviously council's commitment, and given that Peter's here and other councillors, just in regards to the commitment the council will make. Because obviously when we go through this sort of process, and I suppose picking up on Adrian's sort of exhaustion and cynicism around things that community gets really heavily involved in, but to what extent then does the community have confidence that councils are going to commit to it? And obviously Darren through his role, but obviously it requires money and some commitment in terms of probably things that are like little pilots or examples that council's going to put some money and commitment behind to then get the community to respond. So it's kind of like council needs to do a bit of behaviour change as well as the community to respond and see it as an example of that sort of role model. Or so I'm interested to hear probably the panel, and then if Peter or the council wants to make sort of comment, because I suppose, you know, we can have lots of objectives. That's what strategy is about. They have lots of objectives, but it's about it being implemented and happening on the ground to seeing things really changing. Because I suppose the one thing that when Peter at the beginning said about the organic food collection, it's kind of like, it's ironical in one sense that we're sending a truck around to get it collected. Why people aren't having a compost bin, you know, in their backyard, so you get rid of having a truck to do that. Or I suppose my little pet one is, well, why don't we have a recycle collection one week and a rubbish collection the second week? Why do we have 2 trucks running every, you know, twice a week? So there's things like that. But anyway,
I'll have a go at the first one. 2 things. If we design a city so that it works for 8-year-olds and 80-year-olds, the rest of it will be right. And the second thing is that if every child in Bendigo feels comfortable putting their hand into dirt, then we'll be right as well.
I'm kind of going along that kids thing because that's the stage of my life that I'm at with, you know, my 3 young kids, and I guess, you know, I really appreciate the Bush Kinder program that we have, and the way that, you know, we're trying to bring kids into engaging with nature, and I'd really like to see the council support some of those sorts of things, a little bit more as well, and I know the council does for some parts of it, but there's lots of, you know, I'm fortunate, my kids go to a kinder that has access to Bush Kinder and Spring Gully, but not everyone does, and so there must be parcels of bushland areas and all that sort of stuff that we can free up and use for those kids, other kids, so that they have those opportunities as well.
Same stuff. One of the things I look at the future of Bendigo and is concerning to me is that we're not in a food bowl, and that at some point we will run out of fossil fuels, and our food supply system is underpinned by fossil fuels. If we're not in a food bowl, and we don't have access to readily available fossil fuels, we don't have food. So I'd like to see some future thinking on how do we address those issues when the land that we do have in our city that's suitable to grow food has now got estates all over it. They used to grow tomatoes, now they grow azaleas. No? And I guess that's my issue, and that's coming from both as a food retailer and a community gardener, looking at capacity building around supplying your own food needs. 50 years ago, every backyard in Bendigo had food growing. Now half the backyards in Bendigo have someone else's house in it because they've all been subdivided. We've lost that capacity to grow our own food. That's a big concern for me, for a city that's growing 100,000 plus.
I'm really, I suppose, thinking about climate change and the reduction in water that we're going to have to use, and I'm not just thinking of urban and rural. So, you know, I think we need to be thinking about sustainable water management and what we can do as part of this strategy and planning scheme and all those other things, and how we can actually think about it a bit smarter. Like for an example, kind of subdivisions on kind of lifestyle blocks, not just in the city of Greater Bendigo, but all through the corridor right to Melbourne. You want to subdivide these blocks. Everyone wants a dam. Is that really the smartest way to use our water? I don't think so. It impacts on our waterways, impacts on a lot of things that rely on that water. So, and given we're going to have far less water, I just feel like we need to be a bit smarter about how we think about that. Not just about now, about what's going to happen in 30, 50 years' time. Like if we've got all these dams out there, and it rains far less, they might get water and nothing else will. So I just feel like we just need to be a bit smarter, and if we can deal with those issues now, particularly with our planning, then we may be able to reduce some of those problems. So I reckon that's good.
Can I just make one quick comment about what's been said? 6 years ago, I went to a restaurant in Portland, Oregon, and ate at a restaurant where 80% of everything that was consumed in the restaurant was grown on the roof. We just need to think differently about how we do things.
Thank you. Thank you very much, panel. We have run not only out of time but over time, so I apologise to those of you who didn't get your opportunity to voice your question. I would encourage you though to email them through, send them through. These conversations are going to continue on for the next 6 or 8 months, so please take some opportunities to keep raising questions. I will ask that on your way out you exchange your card for one of these that will give you the information on how to contact us and the next forums, and I'll hand back over to Darren.
Right there. First of all, I would like you all to again show your appreciation for our leadership. We do have some small gifts for each of them to in part show our appreciation for your time and effort, both before tonight and tonight in answering all those difficult questions. Of course, I don't have any prejudice.
Still got the time.
I've absolutely lost control. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. That is all from us. A couple of reminders. As Robert mentioned, please do pick up some of those flyers. They're at the doorway as you go out. There's the doorway just before you go outside. Those flyers and those postcards and that information that's on the bottom there again, remember that. But please sign up for the e-newsletter to stay involved in the discussion and know what we're up to. Feel free to put your comments on Facebook if you know what that is and how to use it. And please complete, please complete the online survey as well when you feel ready to do that. But most of all, thank you very much from us for making the time to come out and coming and listening to some things that we're trying to grapple with, but offer your suggestions and solutions about how to deal with those. It's very much what we want to keep doing over the next 6 to 12 months, and we certainly appreciate your ongoing involvement in the process, and tell as many people as you know to come to the next one if you enjoyed yourself, and if you didn't enjoy it, you know what to do. Don't tell anybody. So the next one is on the 4th of August, and it's at our library. That one will be on the growth, development and biodiversity and the challenges amongst those three things when you put them together. So thank you again for your attendance. Have a great night. Have a safe trip home.